turn on this just in case, make sure everybody can hear me.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Murray. I'm an invasive species specialist with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I have been with Colorado Wildlife since 2023, but I've also been involved in aquatic species since I moved here in 2013. I started out working at Boulder Reservoir. I worked for Larimer County, so I've been pretty much up along the eastern slope. Now I am the Eastern specialist. So basically I manage a couple of WID sites myself, as well as I'm the support for all of those WID inspections, so those boat inspections on the entire east slope of the state. So if there are any questions, feel free to stop me at any time. But what I'm going to do today is talk about the different aquatic nuisance species that we are concerned about in Colorado, what harm they're causing, how they got here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with mussels in Colorado as well, and then what we're doing and what you can do to help us. Can you all hear her? Yeah. Okay. There we go. All right, so of course, our program is an overview. Our mission is to protect wildlife, recreation, natural resources, infrastructure, and the economy by preventing the introduction of invasive mussels or other aquatic nuisance species by containing current infestations and stopping the spread into new waters. We are very prevention focused. Our watercraft inspection, or if you hear me say WID is what we call our watercraft inspection decontamination location. So where we are doing boat inspections to make sure that no one is introducing any invasive species. And I will get into this a little bit later, but we do now have full-time staff, which includes early detection and rapid response specialists. We have 4 river basin specialists, law enforcement and admin, and water program manager, our hero. So as far as what are aquatic invasive species? So here in Colorado, we call them aquatic nuisance species. You may also hear aquatic invasive species. That is what other states have just termed them. They are, the big difference between an invasive species and a non-native species is that they are actively causing harm. They are damaging to our infrastructure, our economy, and the human uses of those resources. That is the big difference. These are the invasive species that are listed on our regulation list, which means it is illegal to move, transport, place, or cause these things to be released. So all of these animals here, zebra mussel, quagga mussel, I will tell you more about the golden mussel, which is a new mussel that we need to be concerned about. New Zealand mud snails, rusty crayfish, spiny water flea, and fish of water flea. So those are all the animals on our regulation list. Plants are African Phyllodia, Brazilian Nigeria, Eurasian water milfoil, giant salvinia, water hyacinth, hydrilla, parrot feather, and yellow floating heart. So these are all plants that are on our do not move list. Of those, so we're going to talk about the animals first. The ones highlighted in green, zebra mussels, New Zealand mud snails, and rusty crayfish are ones that are found in Colorado. So I'm going to talk a lot more about these ones specifically. So we're going to start with our other ANS first, starting with the New Zealand mud snail. So these were first found in Colorado in 2004. They are, of course, native to New Zealand. They are very, very small freshwater snails. They were discovered outside of their native range in the 1980s in Snake River, Idaho, and the Madison River, Montana.
And they came from commercial?
Most likely, they actually came from fishermen. These happen to be in waters that are very popular fishing destinations. And people, especially when you have those felt waders, they're very difficult to clean. New Zealand mud snails can actually survive for up to 45 days out of water. So it is not a big jump to say that they traveled from New Zealand to here. Interesting facts about New Zealand mud snails. There are male New Zealand mud snails. They got left behind in New Zealand. These are all females in the United States that hitched a ride, which means it only takes one to start an entire new population.
One female?
One female. So what they do, they wait, yeah, exactly. They have live birth. that is exact clones of themselves. So they lay their eggs that they have are clones. So it just takes one. And again, these are teeny tiny. They are even known to hitchhike down the Boulder Creek on a range of water milfoil. Now the harm, I'm going to point out before I go to the next slide. So you can kind of see in this image here, their little bodies poking out of that shell. They have a very specialized, it's called an operculum. They can close that trap door and lock themselves inside and keep themselves nice and safe and wet and secure. And fish cannot digest them. They can't digest them. So a fish can completely fill up with a belly full of snails and get zero nutrients. So that's the harm, is that one is just starting a whole new population. They can reproduce fairly quickly. It's not unusual to pull up rocks in places where these are found and you see entire rocks covered on the bottom with mud snails.
Wow.
They do tend to like to be more in the muck in the bottom of on the bottom of the rocks. You can see how big they are compared to that penny. They're just a little bit larger than the letters on the penny. So that's how small they are.
Is there anything we can do about those?
Mud snails are incredibly difficult. Unfortunately, because they're so tiny and because we don't have a viable method of control for killing just them. The absolute best thing we can do is prevention. So we really have to focus on prevention because once they're introduced into a water body, we just don't have a way to remove them. Not without killing everything in the water body. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So here is where they are located. So all of this yellow on the map, they're along the Front Range in many, many different places. Boulder Creek is one. We found them in the Colorado River. They're in a lot of our river basins, unfortunately. These are the boat inspection locations that have them. So 11 Miles, City, Chatfield, Trinidad, and most recently they were found in Antero Reservoir in 2024. So again,
Are they all around the country or are they just primarily here in the West?
they are in quite a few places because they initially started in Montana and Idaho and they have spread in quite a few places. I don't know the reach across the United States. We're so focused on mussels. But they are definitely in quite a few places across the country. Yeah. Yes.
When you look at the underside of boats and so forth for mussels, do you also look for those guys?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay.
So that's why when we're looking at boats, anytime we see any mud, any water, anything we can't see, we are concerned that it could have one of these invasive species. So we're also looking for mud snails and whatever else, just in case there's something new as well. Okay. So again, prevention is our best defense. So we've been really trying to target our fishermen. We hand out outreach brochures. We have these new rack cards that basically are advertising the fishermen and saying, so they can see those brochures and be like, hey, that's me. And then it has instructions on how they can clean their waders on the back, just recommendations. New Zealand mud snails cannot survive being frozen, so you can freeze them. They will overwinter in the mud, so that's the winter unfortunately doesn't help us when we have one. But you can freeze your waders. There's also there's different kinds of chemicals that you might also be able to use that will help. Like there's a quat ammonia that people often use to clean their gear, or even hot water is another way you can kill any mud snails that might be present.
How long do you have to freeze them?
Overnight is usually acceptable. Yeah. And it doesn't take long to, like, as long as they're frozen, that usually tends to do the job. Great question.
Do they hurt the fish when fish gobble them up?
Yeah, so they don't hurt the fish, just that the fish are not getting any nutrients.
Right.
So they outcompete the native snails. So the native snails, a lot of biologists told me that they see a decline in native snails anywhere where these little ladies are present, and fish will eat them thinking that they're a good food source, and also because their native food is gone.
Huh.
And again, they don't get any nutrients from them, so they just starve.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the big problem. Okay, any more questions about New Zealand mud snails before I move on to rusty crayfish?
Rather than south to that. Wow.
right. So rusty crayfish are native to the Ohio River Basin. So they're from the United States. They've just been moving around to different parts of the United States. First discovered outside of their native range in the 1960s, they've had a huge ecological effect on the northeastern United States because they are voracious little eaters. They're often used as live aquatic bait. However, they really don't make good bait. Not only are they very aggressive, but they also have a very hard outer shell that makes it hard for fish to eat. So they've actually been known to actively chase people off of swim beaches and pinch their toes. They are aggressive little crayfish. So other things that they will do is that they will eat small fish, insects, and fish eggs. They are very hungry compared to the native crayfish. They eat a lot more. They are, again, just a very incredibly aggressive crayfish. They will also eat the vegetation beds that is essential for fish, for cover, for spawning, and for wildlife food. And they are just another little invasive species that is, they have an attitude.
How big were they?
They can get really big and you can eat them, fun fact. I would say they only get up to about like 6 inches or so, probably a little bit less than that. Like that's pretty big for a crayfish, but you can definitely eat them if you can catch them. As far as where they have been found in, they first were found in Colorado in 2009 in the Catamount Reservoir in the Yampa River as well. And they did try to do a whole huge crayfish removal. Like they really hit with traps and everything for multiple years, and they just could not get rid of them. They were just too good at reproducing and avoiding all of our traps. We found them in Sanchez as well. Stagecoach Reservoir. Stagecoach will actually do a crayfish boil every year. Lake Granby is one of the more recent findings in 2023. And thanks to a citizen scientist who used iNaturalist, we actually got alert that a new population was found in the West Fork of the Little Thompson River in Marion County, so it's pretty close to you guys.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure how it getting moved around. It could be that someone had it as a pet and released it. It could be someone wanted to use it as live aquatic bait because that's what they grew up using and released it. Like we don't know for sure, but more than likely it was people.
And
And
so they attach to people's equipment and
they're not attaching people are deliberately moving them most likely. Oh, and people probably wanted to stock their own lake with their own stash of crayfish or something like that. And because it's so close to you, I just wanted to touch base on, we have been doing crayfish surveys for the last couple of years since our discovery in Lake Granby. The proportion of rusty crayfish has increased to 18% from 11% in 2023. So basically along all of those dots there, you see we put out a bunch of crayfish traps, and from the crayfish sampled, again, we saw an increase this last year of how many crayfish we were finding, how many rusty crayfish we were finding in Lake Granby. Brandon, there are no native crayfish west of the divide, so anything on the west there was introduced anyways. None of those crayfish were supposed to be there. So all of the crayfish that they pulled out were removed.
oh, good.
Yes. Okay, any other questions about rusty crayfish?
Can these live in rivers also?
They can, yes, because they are actually in the Stagecoach and the Yampa. I'm sorry, the Yampa is in the yeah, yep. Great question. Okay, and then plants. So there's one plant in particular that we have here in Colorado that we talk a lot about. It's Eurasian water milfoil. There is, I think, a population of water hyacinth also in Colorado, but I believe it is contained in an alligator farm in Alamosa. That is our only known population of that. Otherwise, Eurasian water milfoil is a plant that we see spreading relatively often, not quite every year, but we do get a new population of it every couple of years. So of course, the problem with having any type of invasive plant, as all of you gardeners know, it just takes over. They will form dense mats that outcompete the natives for light, nutrients, and space. They reduce water circulation, they lower the levels of dissolved oxygen, they're going to increase water temperature and pH, they're going to mess with the entire ecosystem. And the absolute worst thing that they do is create more mosquito habitat, which nobody wants. And of course, they affect our recreation. So that doesn't look fun to go canoeing through at all. As well as boating. We were actually sampling in Boulder not long after they found their Eurasian water milfoil, and the propeller actually got so entangled in milfoil we had to stop multiple times and remove it by hand because the boat could not turn. And
Any of the critters do that stuff.
to some degree, yeah, so to some degree, there's actually a water milfoil weevil, which is a kind of little book. It's super cute. You gotta look it up. It's a water milfoil weevil. And interestingly enough, it actually prefers to eat the Eurasian water milfoil as opposed to the native milfoil. And Stanley Lake has actually been using it with some success. Like it basically is keeping their milfoil levels to a manageable level, but they had to introduce a lot of weevils, and that's they're hard to cure. Yeah, so some things will eat them, but not enough.
Yeah.
It's like a swamp monster.
And not only is this gross, it's dangerous. People have drowned in Eurasian water.
Really?
It grows very, very thick.
Is that what's on the west side of Boulder Reservoir?
Yes, yep. Yeah, that's, I know they had to pull a bunch of it out of their swim beach area, and yeah, it's all Eurasian water milfoil. So when you're down there, that's what you're seeing. Fishing, fish will typically be smaller in weight and length in places where there's Eurasian water milfoil. So again, what is this Eurasian water milfoil? It is native to Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa. It's introduced in the 1940s, but it's possible it's been here since the late 1880s. Most likely, this was introduced by the aquarium trade. As you know, a lot of people, when they're done with their aquarium, they don't want to just throw it away for whatever reason. They try to introduce it back into nature, and that's how we get a lot of our invasive water plants. Or sometimes it might even be someone has a little pond, like a koi pond in the yard, and a flood happens and that gets moved downstream. So sometimes it's things like that, but most likely it was from the aquarium trade. That is now monitored. You can't be selling Eurasian water milfoil in pet stores anymore. But they can grow up to a foot a week. So like I said, they're a very good grower. I wish my tomatoes would grow like that. And the problem with these things is that it just takes 1 inch of a stem to become a whole new plant. So they can reproduce by fragmentation. So they just, if you try to pull it, you have to get absolutely all of it. So that's why they're such a difficult plant to remove. They will colonize absolutely anything you put them in. They will grow long and shallow water. They'll grow tall in deep water. We found them as deep as 40 feet in Lake Pueblo. They just are very good at adapting. And I do want to point out there is a native water milfoil. And so for anyone, if anyone is a plant nerd, I just want to point out the difference so you can kind of see. You'll notice that they have basically these 4 main leaves coming off of them, and each leaflet will have 10 or less leaflet pairs, so it has much less. You can kind of look at it, it looks kind of almost like a pine needle, sort of. It's also stiff when you pull it out of the water, whereas the Eurasian water milfoil gets more goopy. It doesn't have as much structure when you pull it out. And so I'll just show you, there's the Eurasian water milfoil in comparison. So you can see those leaflets have a lot or leaves on them. They look more like feathers. But in doubt, you can always, if you think you find something like that, you can always send it to the invasive species office.
Are they rooted?
They're rooted, yeah. Yeah.
So does one have a red stem and the other one have a stem?
I think it's just the coloring of this image. They both kind of can have that green to reddish color. You can kind of see in both images. One looks like it has red on one picture, and it looks reddish on this other picture as well. Can go back and forth if you need. So you really want to look at the leaflets as opposed to the coloration of the stem. But again, because it just takes an inch of the stem to move these plants, they get introductions fairly often. Boulder Reservoir was our most recent boat inspection location that found Eurasian water milfoil, but there have been several others that don't have boating allowed. But we found Eurasian water milfoil. Most likely moved again by people. And when we are inspecting boats, we are also looking for any plant material. We train our boat inspectors. If you don't know what it is, if you see something green, just remove it. We don't expect them to be biologists. We just want them to remove any plants off of the boat to make sure that boat is not moving anything around. Okay, now we're going to talk about invasive mussels. So we'll start with zebra and quagga mussels, which you may have heard of. They were introduced to the United States via ballast tanks. So a ballast tank is a large compartment inside of a boat that fills up with water. For these big ocean boats, it's to make it more bottom heavy, so they're less likely to tip over in the open ocean. So they came from the Black and Caspian Seas. They crossed the ocean. They got to the port that they needed to. They basically went up into the Great Lakes. They didn't need that extra water anymore, and they dumped it. Again, the Black and Caspian Sea, you'd think that's ocean, but it's not. It's actually more brackish to fresh water than it is actual salt water. And I think that tricks a lot of people. So these are freshwater mussels. They're tolerant of a pretty wide variety of temperatures, anywhere from 33 Fahrenheit to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Like New Zealand mud snails, they themselves cannot survive being frozen, but they can be in freezing water. They've done great out in the Great Lakes area, which of course gets pretty darn cold. They'll typically reproduce in waters from 48 to 54. And we're going to talk a little bit more about their life cycle, but they have a microscopic infant life cycle, which is kind of that little thing in the middle you see. So that's what they look like under a microscope when they are that tiny. They are light sensitive, so they really like to be somewhere dark and deep. They're more likely to settle underneath something in dark places than opposed to being somewhere that's easily visible in the water. So if you're looking for them, you need to look dark places. And again, they can live in a wide variety of conditions, including oxygen-depleted waters. Yes?
How long do they live?
Typically, they can live in the wild 4 to 5 years. We have seen them in the lab live as long as 15 years, but that's not usually normal. It tends to be the 4 to 5 year range. Great question. All right, so again, they're from the Black and Caspian Seas, and quagga mussels actually came from the Dnieper River drainage in the Ukraine, which, fun fact, that's where they were worried about Chernobyl leaking into, and that's where quagga mussels are from. So these were brought over here via trade. So of course, as we all know, there's a lot of grain that gets traded from those areas to the Great Lakes, to Michigan, etc. So these vessels filled up with water, and when they did that, they probably pulled in lots of adult and even that microscopic infant stage of mussels across the ocean, dumped that water. So we saw them in Lake St. Clair in 1988. And the Erie Canal in Lake Ontario in 1989. So that was where it started. And then we're going to talk about golden mussels next. But golden mussels are another invasive species that we are concerned about, first found in North America in California's Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta in October 2024. We suspect it was via ballast boats as well. These next few slides are just going to show how fast they have spread across the United States since their introduction in 1988. So I'm going to go by this a little bit fast just to give you an idea. So here we are in 1988, and the red dots are showing where we first found zebra and quagga mussels. Just 2 years later, 3 years after that, all the way down the Mississippi River into the Arkansas. 3 years later, 3 years later, the stars are showing where dead mussels are found via boat or on top of equipment. 2003. 2007, the first live mussel found west of the Continental Divide in Lake Mead. Colorado found veligers, that infant life stage, in 2008 when they were sampling our waters. And here's where we stand right now. So the the green dots are showing zebra mussels. The gold dots are showing quagga mussels. Quagga mussels will actually outcompete zebra mussels when they're in the same water. I think they could just live a little deeper, darker. Maybe it's that Chernobyl runoff that really helped them out. I don't know. But so to the east of us, it's a lot of zebra mussels, lots of quagga mussels. Everything is to the east of us. To the west of us, it's mostly quagga mussels. So Lake Powell is a very popular boating destination. That is where we find a lot of quagga mussels. Here in Colorado, it's actually zebra mussels that were introduced. Again, we don't know the source. We can only speculate.
What does it mean? Mussels failed.
Mussels fail. So yes, so up until we found adult mussels in Colorado, we were actually one of those states where the mussels had failed. They found the infant life stage. They never made it to adulthood. Most likely because in 2008, after we found villagers, we started our boat inspection program to stop any more mussels from coming in. Those villagers that they found in the water body, they might have already been dead, or it's possible that they just never made it to adulthood, or it's possible that they made it to adulthood, but there was no other mussels nearby for them to mate with, and that single mussel that made it in just never survived. So it's hard to say why they didn't make it, but they never made it, which is great. And there's have been a few eradication attempts, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but it's really rare and usually not successful.
Now, I read that the lakes get really clear and pristine looking because they eat everything.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So the waters can look beautiful. They're filter feeders, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. So the waters can look beautiful because they're filter feeding, but clear water is not healthy water. It means that there's no life. There's the entire bottom of the food chain is missing. So it's really going to impact the entire ecosystem. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Thank you. And here we are in 2026. Again, I want to circle back and talk a little bit more about what has happened with zebra mussels in Colorado. But right now, they are basically from the Eagle River, Colorado River merge down to the Utah border. The confluence, there we go. And they were originally found in Highline in 2022. So golden mussels, I just want to touch on because this is a new thing we need to have on our radar. So they were first discovered in North America for the first time in October 2025. So it's very new. Currently only seen in California, and I'll show you the map of where they've been spotted. The big concern with golden mussels is that they can filter water 10 times faster than zebra and quagga mussels. Zebra and quagga mussels in their infant life stage, that veliger life stage is what it's called, is planktonic. It means they can't move on their own. They go where the water takes them. Golden mussels are capable of moving in their infant stage. So they can move to some runoff. They're capable of surviving more than zebra and quagga mussels. They can live in less oxygen, higher pollution, various pH levels, lower calcium levels. So they are just a hardier and more aggressive mussel, which is very concerning for us to see in the United States. Luckily, however, everything that we do to look for zebra and quagga mussels is helping us look for golden mussels. So as long as we're keeping good inspections, we're preventing the spread of golden mussels into our state. And California has really kicked it up a notch, and they're doing more inspections than Colorado now, which is amazing. As far as where they came from, they are from Asia. So that red on the map, that's where they're originally from. And the exotic distribution, they've actually been in South America and Brazil, etc., for quite some while, as well as Japan. And then this is the first finding in the United States this last year. And this is where they currently are in California. So I think the first finding was up there near above San Jose. I think that's San Francisco, all the way down to LA. Is where they're seeing the Delta. And California has been updating their golden mussel distribution map daily. I hope they're not finding them that fast, but they told us they're updating it daily, so. Okay, so let's talk about impacts. So they both have the same kind of impacts: ecological, recreational, and economic. And as you saw on those slides, they spread fast. So they have three main invasive characteristics that make them so harmful. First off, they have extremely prolific reproduction. A single mussel can have up to 1 million eggs a year. Typically it's more like 10,000. But still, if a single mussel can produce that many, if only 10% were to survive, you're still looking at 10 septillion at the end of her 5-year lifespan, which is insane. It's such a huge number. So they're really good at reproducing. They also have those viscera threads. So you can kind of see in the image those little hair-like things coming off of it. That is a feature that mussels have. So these viscera threads allow them to attach to things, and it's not just a physical, it's also a chemical bond. It is so strong, we've been actively trying to study it for adhesive. So it's a very strong bond that they can form. So they're going to clog infrastructure. They're going to even attach to slow-moving creatures that live in the water, like turtles and things like that. So they can attach and clog and cause harm that way. And as Celeste said, they will clog up the whole shoreline, so you can't walk barefoot on the beach anymore. They are very, very sharp.
Yeah.
And they're also filter feeders. So zebra and quagga mussels can filter up to 1 liter of water a day. Golden mussels can do that in 2 hours, which is just nuts. So again, you would think that clear water is healthier, prettier water, but it's not. So sunlight can permeate deeper. You tend to have more algae blooms in places where there's zebra and quagga mussels because that sunlight is changing the chemistry as well. They themselves alter the chemistry and taste of the water. So they can alter the pH, degrade water quality. Allegedly that when you have drinking water where there's zebra and quagga mussels, it doesn't taste right.
Are they teeny or how big do they get?
They don't get super big. So like the kind you buy at the grocery store, those blue mussels, they do not nearly get that big. I think part of it is the fact that they will grow on top of each other because they're reproducing so fast. But you usually don't see them get very big, and they themselves are really not good to eat just because of how much they filter feed and so fast. They tend to be bioaccumulators of heavy metals and other nasty things. So they're really not even good to eat.
Yeah, if you should look at her display over there, zebra mussels.
Yes.
That, all of those that are stuck together are on a pipe.
Yeah, I think that was left in the water for about 9 months. That little pipe over there, you can just
That's it.
cover.
Jeez.
Yeah. They grow so fast.
And where was that?
Lake Mead. Yep. So again, they're gonna have a lot of detrimental impacts, whether ecological, recreational, and economic. So as far as ecological impacts, they're outcompeting native species. So our native mussels, our native clams, they're gonna alter the food web by taking out all of that plankton. Things can eat them, but not enough to keep up with their population. There's also been the question of, well, what about their native predator, where they're from? The round-headed goby is itself a invasive species in the Great Lakes. It was probably also introduced via ballast boat, and it has just taken over and become its own problem. So unfortunately, that did not work. Not to mention, they are just surviving better in our fresh waters than they are in the Black and Caspian Seas. They are just, for whatever reason, reproducing better. So it's harder for anything to keep up with them.
What is the reason for that?
It could be because the Black and Caspian Seas are a little more brackish or saltwater, and if it's just pure freshwater, I think they're just better adapted for it. They will also increase toxic algae blooms, and of course, we will see a fisheries collapse potentially because of that. As far as recreational impacts, they have the shoreline covered with sharp shells. They will clog boat intake. So if you want to keep your boat in the water, you have to be aware that it's going to be a very expensive cleaning and removing to keep your boat in the water, because they are just going to completely clog up the intakes on your boat. And of course, this also leads to the closures of recreational areas. Lots of our, like, in Colorado, voting is a privilege. It's not a right. And so I think a lot of people forget that, if the water user group decides that the threat is not worth it, they're just going to close things down to voting, and we don't want that. So we're really trying to work with people to, like, please be a good voter, be conscientious, because we don't want your voting to get taken away.
Oh, they will do that.
Some places might, Stanley Lake did. Yeah, so some places absolutely might, if they think that the concern is great now.
Are they inspecting, only motorized, boats, or are they inspecting non-motorized?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we are currently, per our regulation, only allowed to inspect motorized boats at this time. Other states are inspecting everything, like Wyoming will inspect absolutely everything. That's great. I think the problem with trying to inspect some of these things like paddleboards, there's no way to know if someone's driving by, if they have a paddleboard, they're so easily hidden. They don't launch from one spot. They can launch from anywhere they want to, so it's really hard to manage. So and they are a low biological risk, but they're not a no biological risk. There are some places like Boulder Reservoir where they will inspect absolutely everything. They have a gate where they can control everybody who comes into the water. That's fantastic. And Lake Electra down by Durango, they also inspect everything, and they have found like mussel shells rolled up in a paddleboard. So it's totally possible. We do a lot of education now because of this, and really because of the Colorado River, we really amped up our education. You might even see us out there educating the public, and if you go paddleboarding or something like that, you might see us out there doing surveys and asking you how to clean your gear and helping you clean your gear. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but yes. So unfortunately, at this time, we're not inspecting non-motorized, but I think it's really important. In addition, they are also very smelly. So this lake here in Kansas, just to kind of bring things home, is basically they found mussels in 2003. And just 3 years later, this is what the shoreline looks like. And I have heard you can smell this lake for miles. It is not a good smell. Yeah.
What about Salt Lake?
Salt Lake. Where is that?
Salt Lake City, Utah?
Utah only has one mussel infested water body, and that is Powell. So Salt Lake, they're probably doing inspections. I don't know if they inspect non-motorized, but yeah, they do a lot of inspections. They actually do roadside inspections as well. So they're inspecting people as they cross the border into the state, which is, I think, a really good technique.
So what do they do? I mean, how do you get rid of that? That's the case in like a couple of years. I mean, they just have to let it. What do they do?
That is, so what do? Sometimes you can use a molesticide, and I'll talk about what we tried to do in Highline when we found mussels. There's a molesticide out there, there's one called Earth Tech QZ. There are other types, like Snake River, Idaho did the very first attempt of killing mussels in a river. It's never been attempted before. They now are about to do their third attempt at killing these mussels in the river. And in that 3-mile stretch, they had 100% sturgeon death. The insect death was just decimated. So the small invertebrates, which of course will affect the fisheries, and who knows how long that copper will stay in the system as well. Like, it does attach and bind with the soil, but it's things you have to consider. Like, is the cure worth the treatment? So it's really, really difficult. And that's why there's been so few cases of us being successful in actually eliminating zebra mussels from a water body once they're found. That's why prevention is what we're really, really trying to do and contain it when we do find it.
I can see how that could just decimate the fish population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially those kind of the fish that make little mating displays in the sand. There's no sand now, it's all covered in mussels, things like that. Yeah, oh, absolutely. All right, more economic impact. So as you know, it impedes the flow of water to homes, farms, hydrological power plants. increased maintenance and repairs because of that, like Lake Powell has to drain, the, certain parts of the water to clear out infrastructure, for the Hoover Dam. We have increased monitoring and preventative control costs. And so golden mussels have cost Brazil's hydroelectric facilities $120 million in annual losses from biofouling and preventative maintenance. And again, it can create toxic algae. Even though they're good filter feeders, they will actually spit out toxic algae, which makes it more congested and even worse. So they don't even help us clean up that. So of course, then we see a loss of recreation revenue and potential cost to treat a water body can be just astronomical. All right, and we kind of already mentioned that zebra mussel in the Great Lakes, for instance, that cost $300 to $500 million annually, lost by power plants, water systems, etc. So let's talk a little bit about what was happening in Highline, where mussels are in Colorado right now. Up until 2022, we have found the infant life stage, but we've never found an adult in Colorado. As a part of our routine sampling and monitoring process, we found adult zebra mussels on a piece of substrate. So we will actually put basically a pipe, we'll put it in the water with a little buoy, and we'll mark that CW. So if you ever see that by a boat wreck, don't touch it. And that's how we basically, is one of the ways we monitor to see if there's any mussels in that water line. And so that's where they found the first one. We sampled Highline like crazy that following year. We even attempted an eradication attempt. So in the winter, so basically right after we found them in the winter, and then again in the spring, we did a lighter treatment in the winter because we really didn't want to kill the fisheries. We were hoping that we could do this without killing the fisheries. That was not successful. They still found adults later in the spring. So they did another more intense treatment of that Earth Tech QC. And then they also drained Highline as soon as they were able to. They had to keep the waters low for summer because of water rights downstream. The farmers and irrigators had rights to that water. They couldn't drain it immediately. They had to wait a season. Then they drained it. And they drained it completely to dead pool in hopes that the freezing winter would kill any remaining zebra mussels in Highline. Why it most likely failed, however, was because we actually started to find upstream veligers. So that infant life stage in the Colorado River, we started to find veligers, which was extremely disheartening after we did all of that to Highline. And so we've been finding veligers in up until 2024. We were only basically finding veligers in the water. Because we were finding enough, we considered it positive for zebra mussels in the Colorado River. I believe that was as high up as Quebec.
So wait a minute, what are veligers?
Veligers are that infant life stage.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I'll call them babies if that helps. Yeah. Yeah, so we found the baby life stage upstream of Highline, which of course the Colorado River basically feeds into the government Highland Canal and then right into Highline. And we also started putting up these basically these robots that would help us find environmental DNA in the water. And so that kind of gave us a clue on where, because we were trying to find out where is this adult population coming from, where, like, what's the original, was driving us crazy. So we're putting these, we borrowed from the Bureau of Reclamation, these eDNA sampler robots that went into the water. They helped us kind of tell if there was any kind of environmental DNA, just to help us try to figure out where they might be. Finally, in 2025, we were actually able to narrow it down. So we started contacting landowners who had like water bodies along the Colorado River and asked if we could sample their properties. See, that's going to be the next slide. So we were finding more and more villagers further and further upstream. It was like 100 miles upstream now of the original finding, and which is wild to us because we don't know that a villager can survive and be viable for 100 miles of river. Like, I don't think that anyone's done any kind of study about that. So again, it's curious where these adults coming from. So luckily in 2025, we finally found the adult population, or what could be. We don't know for sure this is the original population. But in a private water body in Eagle County, it is the furthest upstream detection, but again, can't say for sure if this is the cause. We don't know for sure. That would just be pure speculation. But it is the furthest upstream. It is ground fed, so it was getting its water from the ground. And we immediately did dye tests and closed off the culverts that could have potentially been leaking any water from that into the Colorado River or the Eagle River. So we had full cooperation with the landowner. And I do want to say this is where things get a little tricky. We didn't go in with law enforcement and punishing this individual in mind because they didn't have to let us onto their property. We didn't have a warrant to go onto their property. We didn't have enough cause to believe that this is sourced. So this owner has been very compliant with us, even though they didn't know that they had this in their water body. They let us in, they let us do the treatment. We paid for the treatment. The POR helped us with that treatment. It appears at this time to be successful. We did a whole treatment over the summer. It smells very, very, very bad from what I've heard. You can actually see this is what they were pulling out of the water. So you see that the shells are pooping. That is a good sign. He's big too. So you can see compared to the thumb side, that's about as big as you tend to see zebra and quagga mussels. They don't get much bigger than that. So these are zebra mussels. And again, it's possible that they're related to the ones downstream. We don't know for sure. And again, with the shells being open, that means treatment was successful. Their little bodies are gone. These are dead shells, which is a great sign. We are, of course, going to continue with the landowner's permission to do sampling to make sure that we were in fact successful. That's what we really want. In addition, we want to sample other private water bodies to see how far this is spread downstream. So considering in the Colorado River, a lot of people's ponds and irrigation ditches are fed from the Colorado River or into the Colorado River. We want to keep working with the public to get that treatment and QC as well. All right. And again, we have continued our ongoing search along the Colorado River system because we really want to know the full extent of where we're finding them. So again, they're found as high up as Colorado Eagle confluence is the furthest known presence of adult mussels. And then we did a huge bioblitz most recently where we found basically just got an idea of where they were. This is when we found them in the Colorado River as well. So you can see that bottom picture is where they were found in the river. In the very deep part, we wouldn't have been able to see this if the river wasn't low. So we did this in a late fall. It was so cold. But worth it. Because again, we wanted to know the extent of where they were. And we're finding them also in a lot of ponds that were fed by the Colorado River. We even found them, I think there's a fairground in Grand County somewhere that had some water feed off from the Colorado River. So again, we've been doing a lot of sampling along there just to get an idea of where they are in the Colorado River system. So there's a county fairgrounds. It's a small 0.07 acre irrigation pond. There's no public access. So these water bodies weren't even on our radar to sample before because there's no public access. What is the threat of boaters or anyone else bringing anything in? So now that we're finding all of this as a result of things attached to the Colorado River, we are really reevaluating where we're looking and doing a more thorough search. And again, we're really relying on the public to help us out with this. They did do a treatment of that pond since they're small. And considering its size, I'm feeling pretty hopeful about that. This again is just pointing out the blitz that we did. We had 75 participants representing 10 different entities that helped us along the river. This all depended on boat access as well as landowner access as well. It's not like you could just stop anywhere along the river and put your boots on the ground because there's so much private property that you need permission for. So it became a pretty complicated issue. But I also want to point out here, all of these pins on this map are all of the water bodies that we found using Google Maps. Oh, we definitely want to try to sample and reach out to. There are a lot. This is going to take us a very long time. Which is why it's so important we're trying to work with people and not just go in and try to charge people for introducing these zebra mussels. Because if we do it to one person, everybody's going to be too scared to let us on a property. Just look for and see what the extent of zebra mussels are in the Grand Valley user area. So this is going to take us a while. Yeah, this is just kind of a hit to bring things to home. As you're talking to people while you're out there, you're going to see increases for domestic rates, water flow assessment, reservoir water assessments, clog intake and pipe maintenance. They're going to have quality to the water, so your drinking water, taste and smell, altered water chemistry, which of course will affect our beer and wine, which Coloradans really care about. Our livestock water contamination with that toxic algae, it will impede water reaching farms, which of course farmers are huge out here. It's so important to our economy. So there's a lot of things, drip irrigation concerns for orchards. There's a lot of things that we need to be concerned about. And we kind of use this information to talk to people about it. And just to talk a little bit about the cost of Highline. It costs $85,000 to have new infrastructure built in because when they first found zebra mussels in Highline, they immediately went to a containment protocol. This meant decontaminating, that's what we call when we hose down boats with hot water. So we decontaminate every single boat that left Highline to ensure that no possible mussel was leaving Highline and spreading somewhere else. So every boat had to get inspected on the way out, get contaminated on the way out. It also costs $75,000 for the additional staffing to be able to do that. $5,000 for water delivery costs because they had to have water delivered to them. The treatment itself cost roughly $170,000. So the total, not including hotel stay, travel, overtime, their sampling costs, was $335,000. And again, this is 160 surface acres, so it's not a big water body. And again, unfortunately, it was unsuccessful, most likely due to there still being mussels upstream feeding into it. So that was really frustrating to find out after we did all of that treatment and killed the fisheries. It was a big bummer. And there's also the Grand Valley Water Users Association. They had to pay. So they operate and maintain the government Highline Canal in the Camino Dam. The main canal is 55 miles long. There's 150 miles of pipe that lead to farms, orchard, vineyards. They have that micro drip irrigation. They found because the villagers were found in there now, they also did their own treatment. They did an EarthPEC QZ, was applied as a preventative measure. They did not see any fish mortality, which is fantastic. But their cost was $100,000, which of course was passed on to the water users. Yeah. They also did a similar treatment again in the fall. It cost them a lot less that time because they already had the equipment for the first time that they had to do it. So what are we doing? What do we do to help prevent and contain this? So Colorado Parks and Wildlife, we have boat inspections. We do training for the entire state. So everyone who's a boat inspector in the state of Colorado goes through the same exact training. We do quality control. We have our early detection rapid response teams. We now have a criminal investigator, which is very exciting. So new as of this last year. So they help us track down, someone posted on Facebook about albino big head carp they caught in a water body somewhere in Colorado, and then they didn't want to tell anyone where he was. But they were awfully compliant when our criminal investigators showed up and had a chat with them. So they were able to find the location. So we have a criminal investigator. They also operate our roadside inspections. So as of 2023, I think officially, we actually started doing our own roadside inspections. So we inspect at the ports of entry coming into the state, as well as at where people typically launch their boats. So that is just a double to make sure that we are inspecting all boats getting into the state. Because had we had that, maybe we would have stopped this infection in 2022. It's hard to say, but ideally we could have potentially stopped that boat at the border. We do a lot of education, so we go out there and talk to our non-motorized users because, again, especially with the Colorado River, there's not a lot of boat inspections on the Colorado River. There's not a lot of boat ramps. So we have a lot of education teams out there talking to people, educating them. Hey, did you know that there's zebra mussels found in this water? Here's what you can do to help clean, drain, and dry your gear. Make sure you're not spreading anything. We also have these awesome cleaning stations. You might see some of these around here. They have some actually in the Colorado River. They're free to use. They have vacuums, they have brushes. They are there for non-motorized users or really anyone to help you clean your gear to prevent the spread of aquatic nuisance species. So we're putting more and more of those out every year. In addition, we are doing this O'Shell campaign because in addition to our motorized and non-motorized users, we have a whole bunch of people out there that don't even realize that they could also be affected by zebra and fauna mussels because of the increased cost of farming and irrigation for our peaches, or the change in the pH in your beer, like it affect your beer or water. Of course, it's not going to come out of the pipe like that, but it can change the taste and quality of your drinking water. So you may see these O'Shell campaigns out there. Again, we're just trying to reach out to different user groups to help them realize that they too can be a part of making sure we don't move around any invasive species. And again, we have a sampling and monitoring crew that's how we were able to find those zebra mussels in Highline in the first place. So they are out there doing plankton tows, which is how you find that infant microscopic stage. They do substrate checks, shoreline surveys, crayfish capping, plant inventory. How often they do that is dependent on the risk of that water body. But they have sampled 227 standing waters and 41 flowing waters in 2025. There are so many water bodies for them to sample. As you can see in that last, all those pins, there's so many water bodies to potentially sample for, and there's just not enough of us. But we are really trying. They have sampled over 624 different water bodies since 2004. So this has been an ongoing sampling and monitoring effort, just trying to figure out what is out there. And of course, we're very reliant on you folks letting us know. This map is showing our inspection stations. So all of those dots represent our inspection stations. We are now up to 79 different inspection stations throughout the state, including our new roadside. So we have them at Cortez is our new one that we're opening up this year. So way down in the bottom. We also have Trinidad Port of Entry on the I-25. We have Lyman on the I-70. Loma also on I-70. We have Morgan on 76. We don't have one on the Wyoming side because Wyoming does a really good roadside inspection themselves, so we're less concerned about that side. But we do have the rest of them pretty well covered, and we're hoping to potentially expand that more depending on budget and availability of resources. And again, those roadsides are so important. Loma, all by itself, actually intercepted 57 mussel-infested water bodies just last year. So Loma is actually the one on the Utah border on the left side there. So they get a lot of like paddle boats, and they found again 57 in one station in 1 year is just a huge, crazy number. So far, since we started from 2022 to 2025, they've already found 127 mussel boats they have intercepted just yet. It's showing that this is a really good way to stop these infested boats at the border before they make it into whatever private water body they were hopefully going to. And we're stopping the mussels right at the border. So then what can you do to help? The big thing we say to people is clean, drain, dry. We really try to educate people. So if you clean your gear, dry your gear, drain everything, you're not going to spread any invasive species. We really rely on people educating. We have the business cards over there, but if you email the invasive species email, that's a great way to contact us and just reach out. If you think you find something, let us know. We'll go sample it, we'll verify that. But yeah, we do a lot of education. We try to go out and do children's water festivals as well, again, just to keep educating them what you're looking for if you do find something. So if you go look in the Colorado River, you're looking for those two-shelled mussels. They're going to be attached because again, mussels will attach as opposed to clams that are just loose. They are typically D-shaped. Zebra mussels have a flat side that they attach to. You'll try to move them and they just don't want to pull away. They'll feel like a wiggly tooth. I like that description. It's very accurate. They don't tend to live in mud and silt because they're filter feeders. They want to be on the rocks somewhere, but in dark places. And so here is just that image of corbicula clams. So corbicula clams are throughout all of Colorado. They are not native, but they're not invasive. They can cause harm because there's so many of them, but they don't clog up nearly the way that zebra and bottom mussels do because they don't attach with those thistle threads. You can also eat them. There's lots of recipes for corbicula clam online. But you may find these all over the place. And another big difference between a clam and a mussel is mussels, if you feel their shell, it's smooth. They're smooth criminals. Whereas a corbicula clam, you can run your finger across the shell and it'll be bumpy because they have ridges. So that's the big difference. That was a lot of information. Do we have any questions?
Yes, you sort of talked on this, but you said, you know, some of these you just can't eradicate, and so you just try to find it. What does that look like?
Yeah, so to some degree, we're able to minimize, like, there's not really anything we can do for New Zealand mud snails, but in some cases, people have been successful with Eurasian water milfoil with certain herbicides. They have to be really careful about what herbicides you're using, especially because a lot of that water is drinking water. So some herbicides, again, Stanley Lake had some success actually keeping, again, having all those weevils in there, and it helps keep to a manageable level. Boulder Reservoir is actually doing this diver assisted suction removal type thing. It's called Dash. I forget what the H stands for, but basically they're going to be doing something new this season. And if anyone knows any scuba divers, they're looking for scuba divers to help them basically suction up all of the milfoil and hopefully attempt to remove it that way, basically using an underwater vacuum. So, which apparently is very intensive the first year or two, and then becomes a lot more manageable after that. So I'm really curious how that works. But a lot of these, it's very difficult to completely remove them. So you can use that copper sulfate, which is what we use in Highline, and it can help reduce their numbers. But it's unless you use a very strong concentrate, it's not going to kill them without killing everything else in the water body. So we've seen it fine. So it's very challenging.
Really terrible environmental issues.
It is indeed.
So does CPW have a protocol for like waders and boots? Because we do a lot of water work.
Yeah.
So is there like a protocol for cleaning?
Yeah. Again, if you're able to just completely dry them, completely because those mud cells are so very teeny tiny. One thing we recommend when you're moving the water is to always move downstream as opposed to upstream, because you may have something that is downstream that can't move upstream on its own without you. So ideally, we ask that you try to move downstream if you're doing any water work. And then if you are going to move back upstream, try to clean your gear before you do that. So whether that's hosing it off with hot water or freezing it overnight or whatever that might be. I know that's not always practical. So as long as you're cleaning it to the best of your ability, you're going to really reduce the spread of even just moving upstream. And of course, if you're going from one water body to another, just try to clean it in between. That seems to be like, and our sampling crew will actually carry around that, quaternary pneumonia, I think is what they use. And so they'll do treatments every time they go into the water. They clean every time. Yes,
So this may seem like kind of an ignorant question, but I've never seen a boat be cleaned. But there's a logic thing in here that's really bugging me, because if you're using like hot water or whatever, what is it that you do to prevent? If there's bad stuff on there, to prevent it from just going back into the water system again, how do you put, what's the capturing system?
yeah, great question. So when you are decontaminating a boat, that location matters. Often places like Chatfield actually has a spot where any of that water runoff actually goes into like a holding pond that they'll occasionally check and just make sure there's nothing alive in there that's invasive. But it's basically, it's draining into somewhere that is not the water body. So where you do it is very important. Some places will do it so it's in a collection pad, so it goes into the pad. It can get recycled that way, which is kind of cool. But yeah, the location really matters. We make sure it's not going to be somewhere that's just gonna go right into the water. Yes,
have any of this with Lake Estes?
no, Estes is aquatic nuisance species free. We're gonna keep it that way.
Well, there are, up there on that,
Yeah,
thank you.
any more questions? Great, thank you so much. There's stickers over there too, if anybody wants some. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Really informative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Sorry, this is, I'm sorry I went a little bit over time. There's just so much to say.
No, that's great.
That's good.